was he doing here? The last time, the stone had fought him for possession of his own soul.
Hey, who do I have to kill to get a drink around here? You? Okay.
Cawing in frustration. They were still searching for a way in. Good. And he hadn't come too late. So that's what they meant by a firewall. What unlocks a firewall? There had to be some way to use the Iblis stone. It was old, wasn't it? People are so much cleverer now. And Renato was pretty sure he was cleverer than most people.
Fun. Let's do this again sometime.
The Ravens at least could not get past this point. Obviously, the temple builders knew how to deal with tomb raiders. How far exactly did these things travel? It was a stone of the purest blackness. It reflected no light, like a void made solid. Nervous, he picked it up. I can make you mighty. Who said that? It was the stone. Eager. Thirsty. Kill the Emperor's daughter. Now you, Emperor. That seemed tempting and terribly wrong. Zenobia was the Emperor's greatest general and a potent witch. But they had been close once, and he had a sneaking suspicion the gem would try to control him. Why not capture the core of Sky Ripper instead? It was the eye of a lost god torn out by the transcendent Emperor to power his greatest weapon. Not the core, said the stone anxiously. But even though Renato knew how evil the gem was, he had a clever plan for dealing with it. The stone bothered him. He hated being told what to do. Wasn't that why he joined the rebellion? Wasn't that why he'd refused to be a soldier? He'd agreed to come on board only if he could freelance. The stone felt a bit clingy, and he had a feeling it did not have his best interests at heart. The sage Calaveras had told him where to find the Sky Ripper, a weapon capable of challenging the gods. Even without its armature, the core would still possess great power. He would go there. The moment he landed the Farfarer, Reynardo had a rare feeling of regret. It's not too late, he thought. He could turn around and sail for Zenobia's island. He frowned. Wait a minute. He didn't want to kill Zenobia, did he? Sure, technically she was the enemy, but they'd been at Sword Food School together. They'd never been lovers, but somehow they'd been closer. She'd told him every secret about herself, except the biggest one, that she was the Emperor's daughter. No. There was something sour in the air, like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time. The stone hadn't lied about what it could do for him. With each raven he cut down, he felt a jolt of power flowing into his arm. "You're weak," whispered the stone. "The core will kill you." "Are you afraid of it?" "No, don't be ridiculous," it chuckled. But it's unstable. It will poison you so much as carry it, and if you try to use it, it will explode catastrophically. Reynardo did not trust rocks that talked in his head. He went onwards. As he approached the core, the stone became hysterical. "No! It's too much power! We'll rip a hole in space and time!" He had a sudden vision of plunging his gauntlet into the core and dying in anguish. That wasn't his vision, was it? The stone had sent him its darkest fears, hadn't it? He had a sudden impulse to do exactly that. He raised his right fist and plunged it into the core. There was a rush of light. He thought he could hear the stone screaming. And then he passed out. When Reynardo came to, the core was gone. But the Iblis stone was no longer black, but glowing with a blue light. And it was silent. "I can't hear you," he sang out, and "You?" It didn't answer. "Ha!" he said. He had defeated the demonic gem with the power of his mind. He felt invincible. It was time to attack the Imperial outpost on the Nexus. Take the battle to the enemy. But among the huge crystals, there was also an observatory. A wise man would probably ask the scientists exactly what he had first. How wise was he? As the Farfarer sailed towards the Nexus, Bernardo wondered if the core had been created to silence the stone, or even to feed its hunger. Well, honestly, he didn't care. He felt terrific, and he appreciated the quiet inside his head. The Nexus was infested with ravens, but that didn't bother Renato. With each death, the converted Iblis stone in his gauntlets glowed brighter, and he felt stronger. Wow. He was getting a bit bloodthirsty, wasn't he? Well, he wasn't one. He was a warrior. They're supposed to be bloodthirsty. Renato was remembering the core, absorbed in the stone, was doing its job perfectly. Renato could feel a little eldritch jolt every time he downed a raven, but then it flowed into the glowing stone the way water flows down a riverbed. It all felt perfectly natural, as if all his life, this was what he had been meant to do. Renato tore through the last remaining guards at the outpost like hot coffee through snow. There was a far speaker toad here. He called the council speaker. He knew she would be thrilled. And she was. She wanted him to come back to base. They had plans to discuss and a medal to give him. A large, golden medal. Great, said Renato. Let's talk about who else I can kill. Then the far speaker croaked again.
Hello, Renato,
he said.
If you get sick of slaughtering second-rate birds in the Nexus, I'm waiting for you in the mountains.
Zenobia. She missed him. She loved him. Once she saw how awesome he'd become, maybe she'd join him. They'd kiss and... Well, if she did refuse for some reason, he was no match for him now. Zenobia was taunting him. No doubt she hoped to lure him into a trap. Well, he was nobody's sucker. Especially not hers. He carried victory in his gauntlet. He would go where the council pointed him. As he set foot on the island, Renato felt energized, like when he was hunting or dancing. Then he smelt it, the stench of ravens. It was a good thing he was here too, before they tripped over the secret base. He was really saving the Council Toad's bacon, so to speak. This was way better than being able to shrink down to the size of an ant. What was that all about, anyway? Renato had an artifact that made him practically a godlike warrior. All he had to do now was collect his medal, head for the Imperial fleet, and raise some hell. See? Renato was a hero of the revolution. He deserved a medal. Soon, he deserved every medal they had, and hopefully one big medal ceremony in front of everybody with trumpets so everyone could know what he'd accomplished. Long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. Nothing was on fire. So far, so good. Inside the rebel base, Renato was invited to the council speaker's private chambers. So, this is the Iblis Stone? He said. I can feel its power. Renato told her how he had fed the core to the stone and made something even more useful than either. Crazy like a fox, she croaked. And Renato chuckled as if he'd never heard the joke before. We've given you the best quarters and a bottle of Tantalonian firewater, all for you. So they'd remembered. He woke in the morning with the sweetest of hangovers. But the Iblis Stone was gone from his gauntlet. The corridors were empty, except for a few rebels who looked just as hungover as him. Come on, you'll miss the battle, they yelled. Renato added sail as the Farfarer scudded across the sky. Who could have taken the Iblis Stone? Was it some Imperial spy? He would find him, and kill him, and take the stone back. Renato had a bad taste in his mouth. He was killing ravens, but it wasn't fun. It felt like a chore. Oh, Renato hated chores. As a fox kid, he'd gone hungry rather than clean his room. He still didn't clean his room, he just moved house every few years. Who had the Iblis stone anyway? Up ahead, he could hear screaming and croaking and cawing. But who was winning? As he ran forward, Renato noticed that some ravens were starting to ignore him, just running away. Who were they running from? Some hero of the revolution? If some other so-called hero of the revolution had the stone and tried to take his victory and his medals, Renato was going to be seriously pissed off. He was the hero, not some other bozo. Finally, Renato came to the Emperor's ship. Zenobia lay dead in front of it. The ship was a wreck. Ravens lay dead, sprawled everywhere. Bloody feathers spattered across the deck and the dock. The council speaker came out. She was waving a sword around like a flag. "Look at me, Renato!" she croaked. The Iblis stone on the sword was black as coal. "Now I will be Empress, and all shall tremble before me," she croaked. So the stone had her. It was in her brain, whining for blood. "I'm afraid I can't allow that," said Renato, and moved to fight her. Toads are not usually good with swords. Something about the footwork. And the council speaker was not even a warrior. She was always tripping over things, which is quite an impressive achievement when you're a toad. Yet somehow, she was pressing Renato backwards as he desperately tried to keep her sword away from his throat. "Look, why don't you keep the stone?" he asked. "You deserve it." "Blood and souls for Iblis," she croaked. "Blood and souls." She got under his guard with her sword. It was just the tip. But sometimes just the tip is enough. He could feel his soul being sucked into the stone. As he died, he felt embarrassed more than anything else. Oh, again? But he already had all the secrets he needed. He was sure of that. He must have not used them the right way. What was the best, worst mistake he could make? Probably trusting that traitor Lapino. The book's pages fluttered to the beginning once again. Faster than before? And he fell. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion, and he had a gut feeling that he needed to use that to his advantage. Renato finally realized that Lapino was a traitor to the cause, and maybe Renato could use that somehow. Lapino. Lapino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen a winged horse. He'd only sold it. But wait, where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the ravens? That was odd. Renato had been here, at this exact place, at this exact time. But this time, there were so many more ravens. were landing everywhere. The advance guard. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lupino first, they'd eat him for breakfast. Or a snack. Ravens weren't picky. If they got hungry, they sometimes forgot to interrogate their prisoners. Even top spies like Lupino. Well, unless he really was a traitor, obviously. Then they'd probably pin a medal on his chest. Dirty and bloody, Renato finally reached Lupino. The rabbit was practicing his shuffle. Bernardo recognized the cards. It was Lupino's favorite deck. Oh, I thought you were in danger. I am. The Ravens are coming. Oh, the prison thing. Right, yeah, see, this guard owed me 53 ducats, so we made a deal. They're very reasonable people, actually, for weasels. Now, I got a brilliant plan to kidnap Zenobia. We capture Zenobia, we find out what she knows, and that's the whole war right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Capture the Emperor's greatest general, who happened to also be a deadly sorcerer, and, oh, his only daughter? That would be worth it. And it would be nice to see her. He'd always had a soft spot for her. And he felt sure she had one for him. On the other hand, he could still get to the core of the Sky Ripper, even if he couldn't get the whole thing. It must have great power. To make the Sky Ripper, the Transcendent Emperor had wrapped an armature around the eye of a god. Bernardo had already let that armature slip away to save Lupino's life. But even its core, the eye torn from a god, surely they could fashion a great weapon from that. The core of the Sky Ripper? Lupino's excited. That's an actual thing that we could just go and get. You've been busy. He sure had. Renato told him all the things he'd been up to. Soon they got to talking about old times, about wages they'd won and lost, and scrapes they'd barely got out of. It was good to be back with his friend. True, the core was capable of terrible, uncontrollable destruction. But this time, he was sure it would work great. It's beautiful here, thought Renato. It was nice to be back with his old war buddy. All right. Lupino was a traitor. Still, he was good company. There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time.
Can you guys actually tell each other apart? Because I'm thinking name tags.
Renato felt wrong all over. He could feel an almost palpable sickness in the air. And if the land could have tumors, they would look like these monstrous crystals. The forest was quieter than it had been. There were insects, but few birds. He didn't catch the ravens. Renato smelled sick animals and dying ones. No help. I'm getting a bad feeling about this. Renato thought. Maybe Lupino was right. Maybe he should have kidnapped Zenobia instead of coming. As he held the radiant icosahedron, Renato felt queasy, like dozens of tiny worms were nibbling his insides. It wasn't healthy to be so close to the eye of a god. How could he use it? He could take it to the observatory. The scientists there could tell him how to harness its ancient power. But honestly, Renato ached to get away from it. He brought the core back with him to the Farfarer. But honestly, Renato ached to be rid of it. "Tell you what," said Lupino. "I'll take it to the observatory. You attack the Imperial outpost." The Imperial outpost was a vital communications node. Taking it could shatter the Empire's ability to coordinate. And it would be full of secret plans and maps and maybe even rebel prisoners. It was a good target for a hero like Renato. But what if Lupino lost the core to the Empire? That could be a good thing, couldn't it? Was Renato ready to take that risk? Maybe it was better if he brought the core to the scientists himself. Lupino was a touchy rabbit. Renato knew that. "You're brave, I know," Renato said. "But this is what I was hired to do." "Oh, well, at least let me run ahead and warn them you're coming." Renato wondered if Lupino was up to no good. What if the rabbit warned the Empire instead? Oh, but Lupino wouldn't betray him like that. Not again. Before it'd been a fluke, right? They finished the trip to the Nexus in silence. He would offer Lupino a chance to betray him, or not to. His old friend deserved another chance to prove true. "All right," Renato said. "Go." As Renato watched Lupino vanish on the horizon, he could feel nausea building in him. He felt ill. Could his knees really be aching this much? But how could he have handed the core off to Lupino? That was a recipe for disaster. Renato felt worse. All his joints were aching now. He'd been through beatings that felt better than this. So the core had a kind of poison that could harm you without even touching you. That's new. Well, it had power. The rebellion needed something with power. And how was this any worse than a sword wound? Well, a death by sword was sudden and fair. This was just squalid. A piecemeal death, like old age.
This chest smelled kind of funky. He hoped he didn't get it in his clothes.
The observatory was a burning hulk. Dead scientists everywhere. Bernardo found the mad rabbit cowering under a desk. The ravens, they must have known we were coming, said Lapino. How did you... Well, see, I was doing a card trick with my lucky deck, and I kind of bobbled the cards, so I went under the desk to gather them up, and boom! I guess we'll have to take the car straight to the secret base.
Renato wasn't sure he believed that. But Lapino was talking so fast. He always seemed to make sense.
The secret rebel base. Yes. They had engineers there. But wait. Calaveras, the sage in the mountains. Maybe he would know what to do with the naked core. The core was killing him. He needed help. The sage, Calaveras, had given him the maps to find the armature and the core. If anyone knew the true name of the Transcendent Emperor, if anyone knew how to assemble the Sky Ripper, Calaveras did. If anyone could heal Reynardo and render the core safe, at least to its bearer, surely it was he.
The base of the mountain was the only safe place for a landing. He would have to continue on foot, muscles aching.
Calaveras was a scholar, not a doctor. Could he really save Reynardo from the poison radiating from the lost god's eye he was so recklessly carrying? Even if he survived. No one would write ballads about the fox whose knees ached forever, would they? Not unless he paid for it. He hated paying for publicity.
Hey, do old ravens go grey?
You know what? Don't worry about it. It was chilling walking through the living mountains. There was always noise up ahead. Insects, birds, the croak and flutter of ravens arranging ambushes. But close by, there was only the breeze and the trickle of melting snow. As if every living thing was holding its breath, his poisonous burden to move on.
Reynardo felt ready to take on new powers. running out for the rebellion. They might already be fighting the Imperial fleet. Everything hinged on Calaveras' ability to turn an exiled god's eye into something deadly.
The core! Splendid! Croaked Calaveras. Where's the armature?
Right, I was kind of hoping you wouldn't need it.
No, I don't. It's just a professional interest. We've got much better prismatics than the old TE ever did.
So Calaveras was an arcane engineer. He fussed at the core all day. He wrapped it with silver chains, and in front of it, he placed a huge, round ruby so that it looked like a monstrous, floating eye. Ah, so, what is it?
Yeah, I call it the Oculum. It's my very first death ray.
And it won't poison me?
Oh, no, it's completely safe now.
Anything I should watch out for?
Yeah, try to avoid pointing at any mirrors.
As he loaded the oculum onto the Farfarer, Bernardo was a little concerned about Calaveras. People who were utterly sure of themselves, he had found, were either experts or horribly wrong. Or both. But Bernardo only needed to fire the oculum once. He only needed to destroy one ship, the Emperor's ship, and the war was over. Bernardo plunged into the Imperial fleet. He felt the oculum humming. He no longer felt sick. This was going to be fun. Or at least, it was going to be over. Bernardo resisted the temptation to fire the oculum until the time came. He could sense its arcane energies yearning to escape the sage's wrappings. But it wasn't eating him alive. So that was a plus. He felt good about himself. He'd saved a friend, he'd helped the rebels, he'd relied on himself, but he'd listened to others. He felt like the right sort of hero. Wise, yet decisive. Calaveras had been so sure it would work. Maybe he could fire it just a few times. No harm in that, right? But only when he absolutely needed to. Bernardo's arm was getting tired. The core was no longer eating at him, but he still felt weak. His stamina was shot. But he had the oculum. When the ravens swarmed him, it would sometimes fire its death ray. It seemed to be warming up too, firing more and more often. Maybe he should let it cool off. He decided to stop using it entirely.
You guys ever eat fresh food? You don't smell like it.
Odd. The oculum was still hot to the touch. He almost thought it was getting even hotter. Well, that was ridiculous, of course. Anyway, he'd only to fire it one more time, and then he could chuck the whole contraption into the abyss. And the Emperor's ship was now in range. Reynardo squinted. He could make out the line of ravens protecting the ship. Zenobia in front, conjuring. And on the deck, yes, that was His Imperial Majesty, pacing in his golden armor. Reynardo lined up his shot and fired. Caught in the beam, the ship burst into flames. The ravens and Zenobia exploded. The Emperor, too, exploded. Reynardo waited for the beam to stop, but it only got brighter, and the oculum hotter. Frantic, Reynardo pulled the oculum towards the abyss. The ruby burst into flames. The shiny metal casing glowed, then melted. That was good. Now the core could cool off, right? Reynardo ran. The blast incinerated him instantly, along with both fleets. The shockwave could be felt across all Erda. That winter, with neither Empire nor rebels to rule them, the islands slid into banditry. And so began the Second Age of Darkness.
Oh, again?
But he already had all the secrets he needed. He was sure of that. He must have not used them the right way. What was the best, worst mistake he could make? Probably trusting that traitor Lapino.